On the late feed, we've talked a lot about the opioid crisis, which claimed 982 lives in Georgia alone last year. It can start with prescription medications and can end with buying heroin off of the street. Well, tonight we're talking about the safety of our children, but in this case, I'm not talking about college kids or high school kids or even grammar school kids. I'm talking about this new sobering statistic from the National Institute on Drug Abuse that every 25 minutes, a baby is born suffering from opiate withdrawal. It sounds scary, and it is, but Natisha Lance is here with a story about this problem and a solution.
Vinny, you know, to add on to that statistic, the number of babies born with neonatal abstinence syndrome, or that's the symptoms that they show, signs of drug exposure once they've been in the womb, has quadrupled over the last 15 years across the nation. And here in Atlanta, it's no different. I spoke to hospitals around the metro Atlanta area who say they are seeing that increase too. I want you to listen to what it sounds like. So what it looks like, babies with tremors, they can have vomiting, diarrhea, and in some cases it can be fatal. It is hard to watch, it's hard to forget, but I wanted to know what happens to these children after these first few days of withdrawal. What does life look like for them? So I went to Emory's Neurodevelopmental Exposure Clinic to see the ways they are helping kids after a drug and alcohol exposure. Take a look.
So this is the FAR game.
Good job.
And the FAR game involves focus and plan, act and reflect.
Can you show us how it works?
Dr. Claire Coles runs Emory's Neurodevelopmental Exposure Clinic.
You got it right.
This game, called FAR, is just one of the tools she uses to help children recover from exposure to opioids and other drugs.
They have some developmental issues.
In the last 4 years, Coles says she's seen an increased number of opioid referral cases.
And how long do you see the effects these children are having from having exposure to opioids?
After they get over the abstinence syndrome, most of those children really do okay.
The CDC now estimates nearly 6 out of every 1,000 infants born in the U.S. are diagnosed with neonatal abstinence syndrome. That's a set of symptoms that show signs of drug exposure in the womb. Dr. Coles evaluates children as young as 6 months old.
Now these are Bailey stairs. Say, look, can you do this? And we use them to evaluate gross motor skills in young children. Can you come down again? You just don't tell them to do them, you teach them the steps to do it.
Practical skills.
Practical skills.
So, Vinny, a lot of the things that these kids are learning are basic things that you and I might take for granted, just learning how to put their clothes on, brushing their hair. But the most surprising thing for me, but also hopeful, was a bit of information that kids who are exposed to opioids will likely be okay. And alcohol exposure in the womb is actually even more harmful than the exposure to opioids. So in some cases, it's kind of easy to feel helpless when we talk about this opioid epidemic, wondering what we can do. So I asked Dr. Coles, what are things that I could do, that you could do? She said foster care is one of them. It's a huge undertaking, but it can really go a long way. And also contacting our legislatures to help programs for prevention and treatment programs for women who have substance abuse programs. And also being a volunteer at some of these hospitals, it can really make a big difference.
All right. Yeah, it's so frustrating because the numbers are astronomical, but at least there's something that can be done here. That's great news. Thanks so much, Natisha.
You're welcome.
Lovin' Alive has covered a number of angles when it comes to this crisis, from how Georgia leaders are cracking down on the epidemic to how the drug is making its way from pharmacies to the streets. Check out all the previous stories. Go to 11alive.com.